I try to be very clear about is that sports are a non-essential but inevitable response to the world God has made. So all cultures participate in sports that you can find in almost all cultures that you can find in the history of the world. And then you have to answer the question, why? And so sports are not necessary. The reason why we can defend sports is because we should not suppress the ways in which we have opportunities to glorify God. Our goal is not a reductionistic attempt to minimize the number of ways God is honored and glorified, but rather the exact opposite. It's to maximize it. So our faith and our commitment to the glory of God extends beyond our church worship services, extends beyond our direct actions of sharing the gospel, into the sense in which we are to say, wow, about the world that God has made. And that's one of the reasons why I tied it to like song. Song is not necessary. You don't have to have song to live. You don't have to have song to share the gospel. You don't have to have song to worship. What you have to have is the gospel message. But inevitably we sing. And if we were to suppress song, we would be doing something that actually detracts from the glory of God. And so when we think about sporting competition and the delight that people pervasively have in it across cultural landscapes, there is no reason to suggest that we should suppress that, but rather we are involved in redeeming it for the glory of God. This is an important issue in the theology of culture in general. Far too often in what we might call the fundamentalist movement, the idea was to shrink down the number of things we're involved in and to shrink the world so we can focus on the things that really matter. But biblically, what really matters is all of life. A gospel that doesn't meet you in the dailiness and the routine is less than the biblical gospel. So important events in the Bible happen when people are walking to a well. So Paul keeps latching on to these sports metaphors because they're so pervasive in the cultural context. And I would argue that the context in which Paul writes is more sports obsessed than ours is. People act as though we're more sports obsessed than any time in the history of the world. I don't think that is true. Charles Simeon, a pastor of another era, said there are but two lessons for every Christian to learn. The one is to enjoy God in everything, and the other is to enjoy everything in God. And so that's what we're doing. And sports is something that arises in every culture. And so we've got to ask ourselves, how can we enjoy sports to the glory of God? We've got to answer the question. To answer your question is, are we attempting to honor God in the world by only doing the things that are utilitarian and absolutely necessary? Is that the path to sanctification and obedience? Or are we doing the exact opposite? We're doing the things that are necessary and vital, and then we're allowing those to shape how we see everything. And so when Paul says, I determined to know nothing among you but Christ and him crucified, he is not suggesting the only thing he ever thinks about directly is the cross. He is suggesting that through the lens which he sees the world, it always contains the cross. And so when we're dealing with issues like this, there is no biblical warrant for people to suppress their love of sports. Rather, the biblical witness would seem to do the exact opposite, like Paul does. When in Paul's day, it's tied directly to idolatry. We can say that it's civil religion in a lot of cultures today and idolatrous, but in Paul's day, it's directly tied to idolatry and certain pagan gods. But Paul does not think that that makes it an unhelpful metaphor for the Christian. In fact, he latches onto it and keeps talking about it. I've been honored to be with you, and anytime, Dr. Huffman, I can help you out, I'll do it. I hope you guys will check the book out. And